What up, Wizards? It's Deb from The Place. Just a little bit of news, a wee bit of news for you today. No big deal, just maybe the biggest change to Standard since at least they announced the 3-year rotation window. But I got a feeling, before it's all said and done, this is actually going to be the most important change to Standard in its over 2-decade-long history. And it kind of came out of nowhere. Like, we actually know a good bit of what Wizards' release schedule is supposed to look like for the next few years until like 2082 or some ridiculous number. But at least for the next few years, they've already shown us what their release schedule is mostly going to look like. But we didn't know anything about this. And on a random Friday at a preview panel in Amsterdam, where we're supposed to be talking mostly about Duskmourn and Bloomborough, they decided to start the whole shindig with a whole presentation about Magic Foundations. What is Magic Foundations? Well, it turns out it's really important. Now, to try to give you a succinct description of what this is, it is a full standard legal set that's going to come out November the 15th of this year. That's going to consist of a whole bunch of different products. There are play and collector boosters for this product, but it also comes in like a Jumpstart-y sort of thing in a box of 200 cards with a bunch of different packets you can mix together and play and all that. But there's also a 350 card version of basically that same product, if I'm to understand correctly. But to answer the question what it actually is, it's kind of like Portal, and it's even more like Starter when you think about it. But again, it is kind of like Jumpstart, and it's also even a little bit like a cube, kind of. As a matter of fact,
so
is it sort of like a core set or something then? Well,
kind of, but not
really. This is an onboarding product. They did stress that, but they also stressed that core sets traditionally have kind of a problem with the larger player base that's already entrenched in the world of Magic the Gathering. They have good cards and such. So sometimes there's just not that much value in the reprints or the power level overall of a core set. So they're trying to fix that in various ways and learning lessons from a bunch of different introductory products they've made over the years. And honestly, I think they Frankenstein together something pretty promising here, but there are sort of terrifying things about it that I have yet to discuss. Now, to that end, there's two things that I need to bring up, and I want to discuss them at length, especially the second thing. But the first thing, I'm not sure too many people actually caught during the initial presentation, and I haven't seen too much chatter about it online since either. Now, we know, and they stress, that there's going to be an introductory sort of base level product that you can spend a little bit of money and get the 200 card product, or you can spend a little bit more money and get the 350 card product. And those products are going to be very introductory level cards geared towards very, very new players. But if those cards aren't good enough or whatever for you, which is probably going to be the case, then don't worry, you can supplement those decks with the booster packs that you can buy. Just buy some booster packs. As a matter of fact, all the cool cards are in booster packs. We know that because the guy said exactly those words.
All of the cool cards are in booster packs.
All the cool cards are in booster packs.
All the cool cards are in booster packs. Look, I think a lot of people are going to find this like insidious, and that is a heck of a soundbite, don't get me wrong, but at the same time, it's nothing we've like never seen before. Portal and Starter both kind of work this way, where you get a pre-shuffled set of decks you're not supposed to shuffle, just follow a little play guide and do what it tells you to do. And then once you learn how to play Magic, you can supplement those decks with product from the booster packs. I kind of like the idea. Again, it's not something we've never seen before, and for newer players, I especially like the idea of a kind of dedicated set, right? That you get these cards when you buy the set, and then when you want better cards to, you know, kind of jack up your decks a little bit, just buy the booster packs. It's all self-contained in this one set. Again, it's not the worst idea in the world, and it still offers some value, again, for players who have been playing Magic for a long time, and in some cases at a higher level too, because you don't have to like gunk up the booster pack product with a bunch of more or less useless cards at a competitive level. You can keep all of those in the starter product and actually put good cards in the boosters. So again, on a couple of levels, these are decent ideas. But I hope you've made it this far into the video, because the most important piece of news is right now. The second thing I wanted to discuss that could be potentially butt clenching for some people out there is that this set that comes out on November 15th, 2024, will be legal in Standard until 2029. And as a matter of fact, I'm not sure how many people actually caught this too, because I don't see that many people discussing it. Everyone just saying 2029. They made it very, very clear that it might be longer than 2029.
The set is intended to be standard legal. We're describing it as semi-indefinitely. We know that times change. We know that at some point in the future, the kind of needs of the new player and the needs of the audience may shift, but through at least 2029, the set will be standard legal, and it could be for much longer than that.
Semi-indefinite. Is that not like slightly chilling to a lot of people? I know that they did a survey a couple of years back, and because of the results of that survey, they've been trying to kind of change the perception of Standard. That's the reason that we got a 3-year rotation, is so that people can play with their cards in Standard longer, right? You buy a set in Standard, you can be fairly comfortable. You're going to be able to play with that card until you graduate college, because 3 years is a good long time, right? But in this case, 5 years at the very least, possibly more, semi-indefinitely, but at least 5 years from the release of this set, these cards are going to be Standard legal. And if that doesn't sound nuts, I haven't shown you any of the previews yet, so withhold your judgment. Ultimately, though, I could see a lot of people vibing with the idea that when you buy this set, you're going to be able to play it for a minute, dude. Like, again, one of the things that keeps newer players from being into Standard, and in some ways probably drop Magic altogether, is that Standard does rotate so much. If it's going to be the flagship format, then maybe it shouldn't change every year and a half or 2 years or whatever. Now, I, for one, like a kind of constantly shifting landscape that tests your deck building prowess and blah, blah, blah. We can get like really pedantic about we can get really sort of pretentious, really, about it. But I do like a Standard that changes and forces you to change the way you look at that format on a fairly regular basis. But again, I know that there's an awful lot of players out there who feel like the fact that Standard rotated so fast in the past was a massive like barrier to entry or barrier to interest in the format at all. So again, I kind of see both sides here as someone that wants the, again, constantly sort of shifting format that tests different ideas all the time. We're constantly throwing this out and trying a new thing. I kind of like the freshness of a format like that, but not to repeat myself, but I totally get it if you see it the other way. Now, don't worry, I'm about to show you some of the cards from this set, right? I asked you to reserve judgment. You don't have to reserve it for too much longer. But before we get there, I feel like the last thing I need to hit is this set's core design philosophy. Whether or not you feel like terms like core design philosophy are a bunch of like fluff that mean nothing, or you think they're actually important. This time around, I think their CDP was actually kind of important. They decided that their mantra for this thing was going to be, what if we made a set that was called Magic the Gathering, right? Let's just distill Magic the Gathering into one set and see what we get. And honestly, I think they did a pretty good job here, but I want to remind you one last time before a card pops up on screen that this set is going to be legal until at least semi-indefinitely, but at least 2029. So with that in mind, the first card that I want to look at from the set is Lawn War Elves, which will be legal in Standard. I'm repeating myself a lot here, but again, 5 years, at the very least 5 years, is going to be. We're going to have a Lawn War Elves Standard. We actually had Lawn War Elves in Standard not like that long ago. I feel like the first time we returned to Dominaria a few years back before Dominaria United, the set that was just called Dominaria, that had Lawn War Elves in it, and like it was fine, but then people started to get sick of it after a couple of years because that's how Standard works. So how about 5 years of Lawn War Elves in your format? The more I think about it, the more I'm kind of okay with it, right? I'm not sure how I'm going to feel about it like 4 years from now, but for the time being, I'm kind of excited about Lawn War Elves in Standard. We had it a few years ago when we first went back to Dominaria. So that was just called Dominaria, you remember? And it was fine in Standard. It was a powerful card, played in a lot of decks. People got kind of sick of it after a couple of years because that's how Standard works. But now, Lawn War Elves in Standard for 5 years, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to feel about that a few years from now. I guess we'll have to see. But this should give you a good idea of the power level they're trying to introduce in this set that's going to be in Standard for a very long time. Yeah, a lot of the cards are going to be like simplified Magic cards with not that many words on them and blah, blah, blah. But at the same time, those sometimes make for the most powerful Magic cards, and Lawn War Elves is definitely in that category. We might even get stuff like Lightning Bolt. Like, I hope they do it. We'll probably just get like Incineration or Lightning Strike or something. They're cowards, right? But hopefully, you know, I'm not asking for Dark Ritual or anything. Is Lightning Bolt too much to ask? Maybe. But either way, I think that at least Lawn War Elves is a pretty hype addition. If no other card from this entire set affects Standard, you know that Lawn War Elves will. But I think there's a pretty good chance other cards from the set are going to affect Standard pretty heavily. Like, for instance, Wrath of God. Right? It's not Wrath of God. It's Day of Judgment is in this set. And it's going to be legal for 5 years, which is absolutely nuts. Sunfall is the better card, I would assume, in most cases than this card. But at the same time, Sunfall rotates like eventually, and this could be in Standard semi-indefinitely. I cannot let go of that phrase. On that phrase, though, I feel like, side note here, if you don't mind me saying this, there are other card games who have like core sets that don't really rotate or that don't rotate as often as the other sort of expansion sets that are in any given environment, right? It's not like this is the first card game to try something like that. It's been pretty successful in other games and such. So I can understand that this makes a fair amount of sense. We'll see how it works out. 5 years is a long time to have a Wrath of God depopulate, no downside, no witnesses, no downside. Just a classic, beautiful, clean Magic card that I'm actually kind of excited again to have this in standard. But, you know, if it were in standard for 2 years, I'd be like, okay, sweet, we get Wrath of God back. Let's go. But like 5 years in standard. Pretty good. Oh yeah, also Omniscience is in this set. Like, that's a pretty simple line of text, right? It's got like one line of text on the entire card. Anyone can understand it, and to brand new players are going to read it and be like, what? And like, yeah. Normally it's a test, right? For newer players, you have to tell them like, no, this card costs 10 mana. It'll never get into play. It's not a big deal. In standard, however, you get this card into play on 4. Pretty easy, dude. Just like reenact the crime. Omniscience. It's ridiculous. So, again, I think this will certainly affect standard and be one of those, like, huge mana things people are trying to cheat into play for 5 years. So far, it really feels like this is a core set, right? Just a set full of reprints, nothing but reprints, iconic cards from Magic history. Actually, no, there's new stuff in this set. They have stated it's about 50% reprints, 50% new stuff, and he swore, fingers crossed, well, actually, that would mean that he's lying. So, like, Pinky Promise, Blood Brothers, whatever, he swore that like they decided that they didn't have like a range they were looking for when they started making the set. We didn't know how many reprints to new cards there were going to be. We just ended up with 50-50. Okay, that's fine. So we've got about half new cards in this set too. We got to see a couple of those today, and one of them actually looks familiar. Like I think it was Gavin on stage that said he had to make sure that this card wasn't already extant, and I had to do the same thing. As soon as I saw this new Anthem effect over here, I was like, does this card exist? Like looked it up on Scryfall. No, this is brand new. Anthem of Champions also heralds a brand new frame thing that they're doing with enchantments, apparently, starting with this set and moving forward into every set in the foreseeable future. Apparently, not just enchantment creatures, but all enchantments will have this like Pharisee enchantment creature frame that they've been using on stuff like Jukai Naturalist and other enchantment creatures since time out of mind now, right? The last 10 years since Theros originally dropped. They've been using this for enchantment creatures, but now all enchantments, and they're using it as kind of a visual sort of signifier for newer players especially, but just for anybody going through a booster pack to be like, okay, this is an enchantment, right? And I'm kind of into that. I've seen a lot of people kind of back and forth on this issue today, but ultimately I think it is a good change, and for the reasons I've stated. Now, Two-Mana Anthem effect is pretty good, although I'm not actually sure how incredible the card is in standard. How good does just an Anthem effect that does nothing else have to be? Mana-wise, right? Could this card cost 1 mana in this day and age and be standard playable? Maybe. I don't even know about that, but Anthem effects are a treasured part of the game for an awful lot of people, and it's probably going to see a fair amount of Commander play before it's all said and done, too. These, like, Selesnya tokens decks are going to eat this up, I assume. But the other new card that we got to see today, and the last card that we got to see from this set, we've only seen a few so far, is 9 Lives Familiar, which is really, really cute design. I just love this thing, but I do think it's a lot of words for what's supposed to be a simplified set. They tried to nip that in the bud during the presentation by saying, like, the flavor makes it obvious what this card does without having to read all the stuff and blah. And I kind of get behind that. Basically, it has 9 lives. It's got, like, 9 counters on it or whatever. 8 counters, I forget. The card's right here on your screen, though. You can read it if you want to. Sorry if you're driving. Don't read it if you're driving. Or frying something in your kitchen. Just don't be safe out there. But either way, yeah, the card basically has a bunch of counters on it. Every time it dies, it comes back with 1 less counter on it. Right? So really, really interesting. It only comes back once per turn. It comes back during your end step or whatever. But, that means that it's really neat for like Aristocrats decks, Aristocats decks, I guess I should say. Just anything sacrifice based. It's a neat little thing that kind of reminds me of a squee with a limited number of lives or something. It's kind of cute. I really like the design on it. And obviously, we like cats around here. Can you see Ziggy? I think you probably can. His head's down there somewhere. But either way, really, really sweet card here that I'm not, again, sure does too much in like real competitive play. But there's a ton of fun kitchen table stuff you can do with it. And that's often what like newer players especially care about. But I've been playing for 30 years and I still care about stuff like this. I'll probably end up getting one because, it's a kitty cat. I got to have all those. They really did hit an interesting mark with both what cards they've chosen to show us that are returning so far and the sort of design philosophy behind some of the newer cards. We also know that especially in like play and collector boosters, definitely there's a bunch of different frame treatments, so not everything is going to look like a normal card. Like here, there's 3 of them right there. 9 Lives Familiar looks great, although I am a little worried that it appears to be on its last life, given all the scratches on its headstone. But we're here mostly to talk about that Omniscience. Jeez, that looks good. That's a good looking Omniscience, baby. So, even if the price of these cards is kept relatively low by high print runs, I still imagine this Omniscience is going to fetch some amount of dollars. In terms of other little nuggets of information you might want to know, first of all, just like a core set, there's going to be cards and different creatures and stuff that come from all different planes. So if you like Kamigawa or Ravnica or Innistrad or whatever, if you're entrenched in the Vorthosy stuff or you just like certain planes as a player because you like their vibe or aesthetic or whatever, then yeah, that's for you. You'll have different people from all over the multiverse to kind of hang out with, but I guess that's also good for newer players, right? Again, we're trying to distill what Magic the Gathering is into one box, and so maybe if you like stuff from Kamigawa or you see the Innistrad stuff and you're like, I like vampires, then that'll give you an idea of sort of where to go next in your journey in the game. So I kind of like the idea, again, of having a bunch of returning planes, but that's not just it. We're also going to have a bunch of returning characters, which you might have expected. They've already basically all but said that Chandra is going to be in the set, which is cool. We all like Chandra, but apparently there's going to be all kinds of returning characters. And I guess for what I think is my last tidbit of information, yes, we know there's going to be 5 Planeswalkers in the set. Now, based on something that one of the presenters said, it seems like not all 5 Planeswalkers are going to be old school Planeswalkers that we already know their names. I think there might be 1 or 2 new Planeswalkers in the introductory set, which is kind of interesting. Again, based on some of the language that was used, but still 5 walkers, none of which we've seen just so far yet. Just to kind of finish things off here with some final thoughts, how do we all feel about this set? I'm really interested in how you all feel about it. I think we need a lot of sort of words from the community about this thing right now, just to kind of get a gauge on the action. But as far as how I feel personally, I'm still not really sure about it. I feel comfortable in saying we've only seen 5 cards from the set. We're going to get a whole preview season like we usually do for every new release that comes out. And around that time, we'll start understanding more kind of the direction they went in and the power level overall of the set that's going to be a fixture in Standard for a very long time. So again, there's a reason that I titled the video the way that I did. This is awesome and exciting, but it's also kind of frankly very frightening to move into a set where we know it won't be too long now, just a few short months, and we'll have a set in Standard that will be evergreen for the most part. And I'm just not really sure how I feel about that at the moment. Part of me just wants to again acknowledge how good this is probably going to be for newer players again, and just players who always hated the aspect of Standard where, your card's going to be useless in like a year and a half, so why buy them, why build this deck and all that stuff. And I completely hear where all those players are coming from, but I'm also a crotchety old man, and Standard has been the way it has been for a while. We already had to go to the 3-year rotation schedule, and I wasn't sure how I felt about that. But when it comes to a set that's going to be in Standard for at least 5 years, if not more, I gotta say, there's part of me that wants to be kind of crotchety about that, and I really don't know how to deal with it. But now I guess I'll turn it over to you, man. How are you feeling about this? Strong feelings welcome, right? If you think this is a terrible idea, let us know down there. Please be cool and civil and normal and chill and all that kind of stuff. But again, if you have strong feelings, let them be known. Sure. But again, if you have strong feelings the other way and you really like the idea of the set, you're super excited about it, you get to play with your cards for longer. Oh my goodness, it's an MTG cube from all throughout Magic history. Was this what Magic 30 was supposed to be, but it's Standard legal? All that stuff. I think there are plenty of positive ways to look at this. So if you're really hyped for this, I want to know about that too. Again, this is an important time right now to kind of gauge the community, see how we feel about this idea in general, even though we haven't seen the whole thing yet. Aside from that, just stick with the channel because I'm releasing a couple of important videos in the next couple of days here too. Like I said, this was supposed to be a preview panel in Amsterdam for Bloomborough and Duskmorn, and they did talk about that stuff. So tomorrow I'll be releasing what is basically a preview video for all the cards that we saw from those 2 sets over the weekend, and there's some pretty ridiculous stuff in there we really do need to take a look at. But also, I just had a conversation with Power Dragon the other day. I know how much you like when we get together. We just had a conversation about all the cards we're going to miss when they rotate out of Standard. And that was a lot of fun too. And that'll be up again in just a couple of days. So, just keep me in your old feed there, and subscribe if you're new so I'll show up in your feed in the first place. But aside from all that, like the video on your way out. If you really like what you see around here and you want to keep the lights on, then check out the Patreon. Link in the description if you're interested in doing that. Just $1 a month really helps out around here. You have no idea. But in any case, we're still gearing up for Bloomborough preview season. There's an awful lot to do in the world of Magic the Gathering right now, which is not usually the case in the summertime months. So I'm a happy clam. But anyway, just again, let me know how you feel about all the goings on today down there in the comments, and I'll catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.